Hey y'all, it's your girl Kia Love. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome. So I'm not even gonna front y'all. Y'all were not about to get this video today because one, I'm so tired, and this is the only day that I have a chance to get this done before Super Bowl. And two, I'm not really craving this today. I wanted to save this for my Super Bowl day. But then I thought about it, and I pictured myself sitting there on Super Bowl eating my good old Rotel dip and hot honey chicken, and I was like, you're gonna be mad that you didn't share this with them so they can enjoy it on Super Bowl too. So you know what? I got y'all. I decided to go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and get to it. So today I'm going to be making some hot honey wings and some Rotel dip, and that's what we call it where I'm from. In case you don't know what that is, it's basically nachos or queso, whatever you want to call it. But on that note, if none of that sounds interesting to you, check out my video from last year for the Super Bowl where I made 3 epic game day meals. I made some loaded french fries, which is still absolutely one of my favorite vegan meals today. I also made some cheesy chicken quesadillas, and I also made some meatballs. I had to think about it, some meatballs with some marinara. So if any of that sounds good to you, check out that video. I'll post the link in the description box below. But today, let's go ahead and get to this hot honey chicken and this Rotel dip. Okay, let's go. All right, y'all, so we're going to start off with this hot honey popcorn chicken. So grab a bowl and your favorite plain unsweetened plant milk. I'm using oat milk because that's all I have at the moment. I'm just pouring a little bit in a bowl, maybe about a cup and a half. I was just estimating. And then you're going to pour a little bit of apple cider vinegar in there. What this is going to be is our buttermilk. So you're going to pour a little bit of apple cider vinegar in there, and then you're going to whisk it with a fork or a whisker, whatever you have. And we're going to place this to the side and let it sit for about 15 minutes. That's going to let it curdle like buttermilk. So this is going to be our vegan buttermilk. Next, we're going to do our flour. So grab a plate, a bowl, a tray, or whatever you want to place your flour in. And you're going to grab about a cup of flour. We may not use all of the flour, but I personally don't like to run out. So I'm just going to start with a cup, and then we're going to season it. So I'm going to season it with a little bit of seasoning salt. Some garlic powder, a little bit of onion powder, chili powder, paprika, ground mustard, rosemary, and a little bit of black pepper. And now we're just going to mix until well blended. So for the chicken, we're going to use pearl oyster mushrooms, one of my absolute favorite mushrooms. The texture is incredibly meaty and it's awesome. Look at how beautiful this is. There are different types of oyster mushrooms, but this is what the pearl oyster mushroom looks like, just in case you haven't seen it before. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this off and dry it off. You want to make sure that you squeeze it out really, really good after you rinse it. Clean it off, and we want to get it as dry as possible because the drier it is, the better the texture is going to be. So I just squeezed it out with a nut milk bag. As you can see, I squeezed it out as best as I could. And now I'm just going to pat it dry until I can get it as dry as possible. And then I'm going to cut it up into little pieces. All right, so now I'm going to cut around the stem. There is a thick stem at the bottom, as you can see. I'm just going to cut around that. You can eat it. It's edible. I just prefer not to. I've had it before, and it's just not my preference. So I'm just going to do that on both pearl oyster mushrooms. And then I'm just going to look at the different sizes. If I think any should be smaller, I'm just going to cut them a little smaller. There are quite a bit of small pieces that are way too small to be popcorn chicken. So I'm just going to jumble those together. I'm going to bunch those together and make one big popcorn chicken out of those. But pretty much the sizes are fine as they are. So next I'm going to grab a green onion and I'm just going to slice that up. So now it's time to season the buttermilk. It's not quite 15 minutes, but you know what? That's all right. I don't care in this case. I'm just trying to get this done. So I'm going to go ahead and season the buttermilk. I decided to also continue to season my flour because I didn't feel like it had enough seasoning. But listen, you don't have to if you don't want to. Most of our flavor is going to be from the hot honey sauce. So I'm using the same exact seasonings that I used earlier. That's what I'm going to be adding to my buttermilk. So I saw this Bob Red Mills egg replacer at the store and I decided to give it a try. I haven't used it before. Typically when I fry and I use an egg for a binder, I use a flax egg or aquafaba. But I did want to see what this would be like. So I'm just throwing a couple of tablespoons inside of the buttermilk. We'll see if it changes the consistency and turns into a great binder or not. I don't know. I haven't used it before, so we'll see. And I also just realized that I forgot to add 2 more seasonings to my flour and to my buttermilk. I did use them in the beginning, but I just forgot to do it when I was seasoning the buttermilk. So that's what I'm adding right now. So now it's time to start dipping the mushrooms into our mixture. So you're going to take your mushroom and you're going to throw it inside of the buttermilk first, the buttermilk / egg mixture. I'm taking more than one at a time just because I didn't feel like doing one at a time. And then you're going to throw it into your flour. I do the double dip method because I like my fry to be extra crispy. So after you get it covered with a little flour, you're going to dip it back into your buttermilk and egg mixture and then back into the flour. And just in case you're wondering, I did notice the buttermilk is a little thicker, like it's binding because of that egg replacer that I put in there. So far, so good. Now it's time to fry them up. I am frying in some avocado oil and a cast iron skillet. Cast iron skillet is always the way to go if you have one, but if not, that's all right. You can use your regular pan. Just make sure that you space them out and do not overcrowd the pan, because if you overcrowd the pan, it will reduce your heat. After a couple of minutes, you're going to see them start browning. It doesn't take long at all. Flip them over until they are golden brown on both sides, and then take them out and place them on a cooling rack or a drip tray. This is a secret tip to ensuring that your fry is extra crispy. It's going to allow the excess oil to fall down beneath. If paper towels is all you have, you can place it on paper towels like people used to do back in the day. But I have noticed a difference since I started placing them on a rack instead. And then you're just going to go ahead and cook the rest of your batch until it's all nice and done and golden brown. So remember those little tiny pieces I told you I had that I was going to jumble into one? Well, that's what this is. I was able to make 2 popcorn chicken out of them. I bundled all the little small pieces together that were too small to be on its own. They are larger than the rest of my popcorn chicken, but I just wanted to show you what I did with that, just in case you have any tiny pieces. Don't let it go to waste. Now it's time for the star of the show, the hot honey sauce. So the first thing you're going to need is about a tablespoon of butter. This is my vegan butter recipe. If you haven't seen that, it's super easy, super delicious. You can check it out. It's linked in the description box below. But you're just going to let that butter melt. Once your butter is melted, you're going to add half a cup of raw agave. In more recent years, honey has been considered vegan, but in earlier years it was not, so it has become controversial. I do know some very popular vegans who use it and some who do not, but hey, that's why I'm sharing this recipe for those who do not, to show you that you can still make a delicious hot honey sauce without it. If agave isn't sweet enough for you, you can add a little bit of maple syrup. And then once you do that, you're going to grab 1/4 cup of hot sauce. I am using Louisiana hot sauce because I personally wanted that taste that Louisiana sauce has. But if I didn't have that, I probably would have used Frank's or Pete's, but it's up to you. Then you're going to give it a quick stir. I do have this heat on low to medium heat. And now I'm going to add a few seasonings. So for an extra kick, I'm going to add some crushed red pepper, but you do not have to do this, especially if you don't like spicy, because you do have the heat from the hot sauce. And then I'm going to add a little bit of garlic powder and a little bit of onion powder. And for a little bit of smoky flavor, I'm going to add a little bit of smoked paprika. Go ahead and give that a quick stir, and then we're going to let it sit on the heat for a few minutes just to let the flavor settle together. If you want this to be a thicker sauce, you can always add a cornstarch slurry or whatever your favorite thickener is, but I do not need that for this recipe, so I'm just going to let it be just as is. As you can see, the sauce is piping hot. It has been sitting on the heat, and it's all flowing together, and this is what it's looking like. All right, y'all, this is the final product. Look at our crispy popcorn chicken. So now we're just going to drizzle that good old hot honey sauce on top of our chicken. Ooh, look at that, y'all. Like I said, if you want it to be thicker, you can add a cornstarch slurry or some type of thickener to your sauce. But baby, let me tell you, you're not going to need it. You're not going to need it. And then we're going to sprinkle some of those green onions that we chopped up earlier to top it off. Y'all, this is going to be so good. Y'all, this was so good. So sorry for the horrible lighting, but this was so good. I think you're really going to like this. Just in case you're wondering, I would not recommend the egg replacer. It did change the texture of the fry. It was still crispy, but it made it like a dissolving light crispy. I don't even know how to describe it, but I just wasn't a fan of it. So I wouldn't use that again. But other than that, this recipe was bomb. Now let's move on over to the Rotel dip. Go ahead and heat your skillet to a medium heat and spray it with a nonstick spray. I am going to use my vegan ground beef crumble recipe, but if you prefer, feel free to use a processed mock ground beef like the Impossible or Beyond Meat ground beef. I wanted to keep it more natural today, so if natural is what you prefer, you can check out my recipe linked in the description box below. I do cook it in batches and freeze it, so it's already cooked. I'm just heating it up in the skillet and adding a little bit of taco seasoning and a little bit of water. And to get that greasy ground beef texture that I love so much, I'm going to add a little bit of refined coconut oil. It must be refined or else it will taste like coconut, and we don't want that, okay? So for the queso, we're going to use this vegan brand called Homemade. This is my second time using it. I bought this from Whole Foods. The ingredients appear to be really clean. There's cashews, potatoes, carrots, and a few other things. No soy. If you didn't know, I do not use soy. So that's what we're going to use. If you're not familiar with Rotel dip, most people use the Velveeta block. But of course, we're doing it the vegan way, so we're not going to use that. And of course, you cannot have Rotel dip without the Rotel tomatoes. Y'all, quick story time really quick. So I remember this girl from California. She was hanging out with her family in Texas one time, and she was talking to me about the Rotel dip. And when we got into that conversation, she had no clue that we called it Rotel dip because of the Rotel tomatoes. She literally thought it was just because most people, just in case you didn't know, most people cook this in a crock pot. So she literally thought we called it that just because we're cooking like nachos in a crock pot. She had no clue it was because of the Rotel tomatoes. So I thought that was kind of funny. But anyways, y'all, you're going to drain your tomatoes. Go ahead and throw some of those in your skillet. I don't like to use the whole can. And then throw in your ground beef. Make sure it's cooked ground beef. If you decided to use one of those mock meats, go ahead and do that. And then I also like to add a little bit of salsa just to jazz it up a little bit. My favorite salsa. This is one from my local grocery store. The homemade brand also has a really good salsa. It's one of my favorites as well, but I didn't want to open it for this. I wanted to save it for another day, but I will show y'all that a little later. But go ahead, make sure your skillet is on low because you don't want to burn the cheese. So put it on low. We're going to let all of that mix together. And then if you want to, you can add a little milk. In the original Rotel recipe, most people do add a little milk because the Velveeta is so thick. We don't necessarily need it for this, but I did want to add a little bit. So I added a little bit of oat milk. And this is the homemade salsa that I was telling you guys about. It is medium, and y'all, it is so good. I just didn't want to use it today. I wanted to save it for something else. So while that's simmering, I'm going to go ahead and chop up some veggies, but just in case you didn't know, you usually don't add these things to a classic Rotel dip. You usually just stick with your Rotel, your cheese, and your meat, and your chips, of course. But y'all know I don't like to follow instructions. I like to do things my own way. So I'm going to go ahead and do more so like nachos and add my favorite toppings. So I chopped up a green onion. I'm also going to chop up a tomato, some jalapenos, and cilantro. But like I said, if you want to keep it more classic Rotel dip, you don't have to add this. So our Rotel dip has been simmering for a few minutes, and this is how it's looking, y'all. It's probably been about 7 minutes, and it's looking really good, y'all. If you want it to be extra cheesy, feel free to throw in some vegan shreds here and let that melt. I didn't have any, and I wanted to keep it more natural today, so I'm not adding it. But hey, if you want that extra cheesy kick, feel free to add some vegan shreds in it. Now it's time to build our nachos. I like to use 2 different types of tortilla chips. So I have some spicy tortilla chips here, and then I also have some plain sea salt ones that I'm going to add. And I also like to do this in layers. Listen, you do not have to do this. You can literally just put your Rotel dip in a bowl and dip your chips in that bowl and serve it that way. Or you can build it like nachos, which is what I'm doing. So I'm just doing it in layers so we are not missing any chips. We're not going to let no chip get left behind, okay? So I drizzled some of that good old Rotel dip on top of the first layer. Now I'm adding my toppings, my green onion, my tomatoes, my cilantro, and my jalapeno. And now I'm going to add my regular plain sea salt chips, and then I'm just going to do that same thing. And you already know I had to dab it off with a little bit of guacamole. This is my recipe. It's super simple. If you haven't seen that, you can check it out. The link is in the description box below. You can literally make that guacamole in 3 minutes. It's super quick and easy. Nothing fancy. Just really good guacamole that's super quick and simple. Y'all, this is the final product. Like I said, you don't have to build yours this way. You can literally place your Rotel dip in a bowl and start dipping your chips in that. But y'all, listen. You are going to be set for Super Bowl. Listen, and if you ain't even watching Super Bowl, you're going to be set for game night, your kickback, your girls' night, sleepover, whatever you're doing. You're going to be set, okay? You're going to be good. You good. All right, y'all. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you'd like to be notified whenever I post, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon will ensure you get notified. And if you'd like to connect with me, follow me on Instagram, y'all. Hit me up. Anyways, y'all, it's your girl, Kia Love. Until next time, y'all, peace and love.